You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Helen Mackenzie, and today is Friday, the 21st of January 2022.
6.
This week's Procurement 6 is proudly sponsored by Zip Intake to Procure. Zip is the world's leading intake to procure solution, one place for employees to initiate a purchase or vendor request. At AOP, we're all about elevating the impact that procurement can have on the business. So this week's tip is designed to help you think about how you can set a procurement metric that's aligned with your organisation's goal. When you're considering what metrics to use in your contract, think about the following steps. All organisation objectives can be translated into procurement-specific metrics. Start by choosing one, for example relating to sustainability, to work on. Once you've decided on the metric to use, think about where you're going to source the information that you're going to use to measure performance. Step 3 is to develop a method for tracking, communicating and assigning responsibility for the metric. Will you provide the information or will the supplier? And finally, you need to establish a baseline as well as an improvement target for your metric and make sure you've tied it to a specific period of time.
5.
This week on the Art of Procurement podcast, Phil welcomed back Mark Pereira, the CEO of Visible, and Peter Smith, the Managing Director at Procurement Excellence. Mark and Peter have just published a new book called Procurement with Purpose. And you've guessed it, it's all about the power that procurement professionals have to use our buying power to help drive change around the world. Whether it's tackling climate change, habitat loss and plastic waste, or social issues such as modern slavery, inequality or discrimination. Now, the podcast is a great discussion on the notion of procurement with purpose and the insights that Peter and Mark explore in the book. And my favourite part, and the extract that we've chosen for you today, is Mark's practical advice on how to take action to procure with purpose right now.
I would go onto the science-based target website and look at the science-based target that your company's done. For the more extreme ones, I would get a semi-permanent tattoo done or what that science-based target is on the back of your hand. For those who don't want to go doing on a semi-permanent basis, maybe a large post-it note that sits above your laptop screen of that science-based target. And as every 5 weeks represents 1% of the decade, I would go on to the science-based targets every day. And for every day over the next 5 weeks, look at your top 35 suppliers and read their science-based targets and put that on another post-it note and put them all over your wall and get a little, these little dots that you have on there, maybe picking out different colors to represent different parts of your science-based targets and how many of your suppliers are aligned to that. I think you'll learn a huge amount about your suppliers. I guess your top 25 suppliers in any company is going to represent a reasonable amount of spend for you and a reasonable amount of impact. But just doing that and then grouping them together on your wall in your office, I think it'd be really valuable to understand. If we are as good as the 5-10 people we spend the most time with, I guess as a corporate, you're as good as the top 35 companies that you spend your money with. So I would take that action over the next 5 weeks. And you could even do that for the 12 days of Christmas as well.
You get the names of the top 25 suppliers all tattooed on your forehead or something. That would work.
Wow, that's really interesting. We'll see if we see Peter next time with tattoos all over his body. We know he's been drinking too much of that lovely red wine and gone down to the tattoo parlor and done that. But I think that's it. I think there's small things you can do, and if you think about every category manager. If you're a CPO and listening to this, about doing exactly the same thing. Look at the top 35 suppliers in the next five weeks, get your category managers to do the same thing, read their science-based targets. And the ones who haven't got science-based targets, well, maybe we should be having a conversation with them about why we need to put some science-based targets and explaining what our purpose is, what we're trying to achieve, and see how they can align that in your next QBR meeting.
4.
The third Monday of January was first described as Blue Monday by Cliff Arnold way back in 2004. And this was because in some countries he'd observed a dip in people's well-being that occurred once the holiday season was well and truly over. And while the scientific basis of Blue Monday claims have been disputed over the years, January is often a time that people take stock. Could the Great Resignation be about to recommence in earnest, I wonder? And what might that mean for us in procurement? Check out the AOP blog to find out more.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
Are savings all that us procurement people really care about? Absolutely not. There's definitely more to us than meets the eye, isn't there? But unfortunately, that's not what many of our stakeholders think. So how can we change their perception of procurement? Joe Payne from Corecentric has a fruity metaphor to help us with this challenge. He says, "We don't always talk about apples to apples conversations. If all they've ever seen is an apple, they don't know that an orange can possibly exist within that space. So that's where, if there isn't the perception at the C level, procurement should proactively go in to talk to them about what we know good procurement can be, and talk in terms of business outcomes first."
2.
Supply chain ethics are front and centre in the news this week. First, the news that the Canadian government is following action taken by the US to ban gloves manufactured by forced labour. We're reading that UK high street retailer River Island has partnered with Segura, a platform for next generation supply chain transparency, to ensure its suppliers are ethical, sustainable, efficient and compliant. The solution is claimed by Segura to be the only one on the market that enables companies to continuously map and monitor their multi-tiered supply chain and will support River Island's corporate sustainability goals. And finally, in a blog post on Manufacturing Global, Google Director Anne-Marie Scott stressed the importance of having digital partner ecosystems. Her view was that this type of collaboration will benefit businesses through shared knowledge, something we're already seeing in procurement's digital ecosystem. Now, one piece of advice from me when it comes to ethical supply chains is to do a risk assessment first. Make sure you focus on the categories where there have been reports of challenges in the past. It's a great place to start the process.
1.
Are you ready for AOP Digital Outcomes? It's a brand new digital conference from Art of Procurement that will take place between March the 8th and the 10th, 2022. And I'm delighted to be taking the lead for making that event happen. For 2 hours each day, we're going to be taking a different approach to discussing procurement transformation and focusing on what matters most, the outcomes that digital transformations deliver. Through the event, we'll focus on 3 key themes: driving strategy, speed, and scale. Register for free and you'll not only get access to the live event, but also the event recordings. And if that's not enough, before the end of January, we have the first in our popular AOP Live webinar series for 2022. On January 25th, Heterica of Cievo and Flavio Monteleone of Bain & Company will take on the challenge of discussing ways for procurement technology to make the most out of its data. They'll be joining Phil to discuss why procurement should embrace data transparency even when it hurts, how to actually leverage the dirty data trapped in your procurement system, and what is a data-driven mindset and how should procurement use it. Just go to artofprocurement.com/calendar to find out more.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.